Welcome to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, your personal, professional, and career development podcast. I'm one of your co-hosts, Dr. Dave Peltz, and with me, as always, is my esteemed colleague, Dr. Joe Hamlett. How are you doing today, Dr. Joe?
Think I'm doing better than you.
I
I'm doing good.
think I got the wrong stuff in my coffee cup this morning. Oh, great. We'd like to welcome all of our viewers and listeners back to another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast. If this is your first time, welcome. We hope you get something fun and exciting and new out of this. If not, we've got plenty more to look at and listen to. And with that, and our usual fashion, we're going to, I'll announce what our topic is, and then I'll throw it over to Joe and get his initial thoughts, and we'll have this awesome conversation. So, Joe,
Right.
today our topic is, who are you today? Now, in the previous episodes, we've done what shirt are you wearing today? Where are you today? And this one's digging down a little bit deeper. Who are you today? So, what are your thoughts on who are you today?
That's a good question because as we progress through life, we typically start to put on many hats. And so deciding which hat to put on in any given situation could be a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's funny we are going to talk about this. I think now in terms of who I was and who I was portraying at that time, and now how a lot of that has changed. So if you ask me today who I am, it would really be dependent on the situation.
Mm-hmm.
Like today, I'm off work, so relaxing, Joe. I'm just doing our podcast and thinking about what's left for the day. But going to work tomorrow, I'll be put on a different hat, and I'll be Doctor Joe. I'll be Doctor Hamlet, just depending on what it requires. So that's this topic could be wide open
Mm-hmm.
because I remember a few years back when I did a podcast, and it was kind of the topic was from average Joe to Dr. Joe. And I remember that um, we discussed that, and it really had an impact on me because, up to that point, I did believe I was just average Joe until I became a doctor, until I became so many other things. But I was really um, being untrue to myself. Again, playing down who I was. So that is a challenge, really defining who we are. I'm Granddad Joe. I'm Professor Joe. I'm Arthur Joe. So it really depends on the situation. So I'll leave it there because again, I know we can go down many rabbit holes with this. It could be your mood. It could be your team's mood at work, who you become that day. So I'm anxious to hear what your thoughts are on who you are today.
Yeah, Joe, that's an awesome introduction. I love it. Great way to kick the topic off. Yeah, it's you're absolutely right. We can look at this from so many different perspectives. Am I being the right person in the right moment today?
Right.
Am I celebrating when I should be a little bit more reserved and helping my team out because they need a little bit more support? So it doesn't seem
Right.
like I'm just boastful, Dave. I'm like, oh, look at me, I'm all great. You guys suck. It's like,
Right.
you know, I can still be celebrating, but I don't have to make, all the fanfare. And I can still be, leader Dave to help my team, and am I being there for my team? Am I uplifting someone who needs to be uplifted, whether they're behind schedule or not? Or do I need to flip it the other way and not be so happy because I have to do the part of my job that I don't like being a leader and maybe having to
Right.
have those hard conversations with someone, or maybe it's just friend Dave or teammate Dave or leader Dave. Am I really being present in that leader role, or am I just checking that box? Because your employees will see it, your teammates will see it. People can tell when you're being genuine and authentic, and that was a couple of the other things we talked about before this podcast. About authenticity. And are you bringing maybe you have something going on that's distracting you from being present in the moment. And to your point, it depends on the situation. And do you have the self control and self awareness to bring the right you in that moment, and be able to, set it aside at the door so you can be present, so you're not distracted. Are you in that moment the right person, or are you on your electronic device doing something else, missing a lot of the important things that you need to be aware of?
Right. No, and again, I mentioned this at the very beginning. This could go down a bunch of different ways, and I when you brought in authenticity, that really resonates with me. One of the things, and I've mentioned this before, my mom had dementia in her later years, and every time I seen her, went to visit her, she would say the same thing, hey, you need to write a book, you need to do these things. And at that time, I'd already done those things. But again, she
Right.
didn't remember. But the one thing that she kept saying was make sure you stay true to who you are. And so that, I knew that before that, but that just, again, just continued to imprint that in my brain that I needed to do that. But now that we're talking about who are you today, that could take on a lot of different um, it could be a lot of different things. And like you just touched on, depending on the situation, you may have to, be a different me, in my case, a different Joe, depending on that situation. So I kind of liken this to as a leader when you're interacting with your team, and you treat one team member this way because this is what they need, and another teammate you do this for them that way because of what they need. So I think that's really similar to what we're talking about. Who are you today? And that's exactly what it is. Um, what type of situation are you trying to remedy? What type of thing are you trying to interact with? What it really comes down to the situation and your ability to maybe respond or react to that situation appropriately. Like you say, you may come in, just had a great weekend, and you're on top of the world because things are going great for you, but your teammates coming in and they've had a really rough weekend. Do you stay your who you are, or do you become attentive and figure out what's going on with that teammate to help them out? So it really does. Again, you're switching hats on and off. I mean, it's almost like you're Superman or Clark Kent going into the phone booth and pulling out your cape because you need to figure out what's going on with your team. Or like you said, you may have a deadline. You come in harping, hey, we need to get this deadline done. Again, you look over in the corner and see one of your teammates struggling. So do you take that hat off for a while or a period of time, go over and comfort that employee or that teammate, and then come back? Or so again, it really is having that ability to understand what's needed at that time. So that's who you might become. So that's the way I view this, as just being open and hopefully being aware of what's going on around you will help you, be that person that you need to be at that time.
Joe, you reflected back when your mom was going through a challenging time in her
Right.
life, and you were too. And it makes me think, you know, 30 years ago and 5 careers. I was in the military, and on that particular day, I was military police Dave,
Right.
doing my
Right.
job. And then maybe another day, years later, I was, struggling through relationships, and it's like that was struggling Dave. And I think about when we talk about who are you today, am I allowing myself to go back and become something I no longer am because of old habits? Am I allowing myself to be upset or stressed or challenged by something that I've already overcome? I know how to do it. And am I actually conscious and aware enough to say, acknowledge, I'm late for work, Dave, but I'm not late for work. So why am I feeling that way? I need to be present because I'm going to be 10 minutes early. What's going on in my head? Why am I being victim Dave when I just got a promotion?
Right.
You know, and it made me think about all the different the iterations of me that I've been, where I've evolved and sometimes de-evolved and gone back
Right.
and
Right.
reverted
Yeah.
and getting caught in those cycles. One of the colleagues I had in the military told me, you need to break this cycle.
Mm.
I was frustrated and I was, doing a lot of great things, but I was trying to find my way in my career to really get myself in the best possible position. And I'd take two steps forward and one step back. And it's like
Right.
they told me, you got to break the cycle. You got to keep pressing forward. Don't relax and let other people pass you while you still have this momentum. And I think that was a very important turning point for me because it was a reality check. And I've had to think about that many times since then, 30 years ago. It's like, how many times have I thought about that moment to help keep me where I am today? You know, you can't,
Right.
I
Right.
can't fix all my employees. I can't fix all my teammates, peers, and stuff like that. But who can I help?
Right.
So I'm not overwhelmed and I'm distracted from my job and putting my job or position or my, personal life at risk for trying to do all this extra stuff or all this stuff for other people. There's got to be that point, that line that you draw that's where it's not, I'm here to help everybody, Dave, or I'm not here to, you know, be the bull in the china shop and leave all this collateral damage, you know, Dave. It's who do I need to be the best Dave I can today in that moment? Like you mentioned, it's very situational, but you
Right.
also have to be aware of what's outside that immediate situation, what's happening all around the impact. The analogy that we've used before in the past is, the food in the kitchen is great, it's awesome, it's we've got 5-star ratings, but the ship is sinking. Are you really paying attention to the person you need to be in that moment? Do you need to be the greatest chef in the kitchen, Dave, or do you need to think about getting your team off the boat?
Right. Well, you touched on something that, again, I think we all struggle with sometimes. Is that I think you might call it the victim, Dave, but it really does sometimes force makes you want to go back to figure out, okay, I was at this point before. How did I overcome it? What happened, and how can I apply that to this? To myself today, who I am today. But I think that that is important because we do go through those struggles. Once we overcome struggles doesn't mean we're not going to have struggles anymore, but more than likely we are going to have struggles. But having that ability to go back and to kind of revisit, okay, this is where I was 10 years ago, like you said, even 30 years ago. How did I overcome those things? How did I, make it on the other side of that? What do I need to do today? So sometimes it does take, and we talk about this all the time, that self-reflection, that critical self-reflection. We can't move forward until we make peace with, the past, or again, utilize some of those things that helped us in the past to maybe move forward in the beginning or in the present. So I think that is an important aspect of that. Even the idea that we feel like we're a victim again, and we've gone through this scenario before. Even people that try to encourage you, hey, this is not as bad as it appears. These are some of the things you can look, up to or forward to, and you've experienced all those things before. But sometimes you do need a little assistance on who you are today, because a lot of times we get moving forward, and we forget sometimes about those hard times, those difficulties that we struggled through, and we're able to come over or out on top again. So I think it's important that we do sometimes take time to go back and think about, okay, I did overcome this, or even take stock. And we've talked about this before. Take a look at all those things that you've accomplished, all those things that you've overcome, all those things that you've done to help you get to, in my case, the Joe I am today. Who am I today? And it's because of that journey that I've had, those experiences. And that's why we touched on this before, the whole idea of handing somebody else your blueprint, and having them experience what you've experienced. They can do it to a certain degree, but not all, and it's not gonna define them the way it defines you. So I think that's important, that we all go back and reflect a little bit on, okay, how did I get here? Because that's how you got to where you are today. That's how you are the you are today is because of that journey, is because of those struggles, is because of those triumphs. So I think that's an important piece of this when you're thinking about who you are today.
Yeah, you know, and it it makes me think, are you the right you today? You know,
Right.
are you reverting back to habits because you're stressed out, or
Right. Yep.
you're elated and you're happy and you're like, oh, I got this, I can do it now. And then did you really break that cycle and move forward, or did you break the cycle temporarily and then revert
Right.
because of
Yep.
that moment of success? And you think, oh well, I did it. You know, it's no big deal. And you realize maybe you didn't do it. Maybe it's just a temporary break, not a full crushing of that cycle, you know, or those behaviors. You know, did you improve those behaviors temporarily to get the accolades or the promotion or the networking opportunity, or did you truly break it so you can be available all the time when you need to be and be the right you in that moment of that day?
Right. Well, you talked about the military, and again, just for a little bit of just comedic relief, I remember, when I became a doctor, I was also a first sergeant, and then I was also an adjunct professor. So it was funny when I would sometime walk in a room, they'd be like, "So, good afternoon, doc." Shirt, professor. So that became a kind of a running joke of who I was
Mm-hmm.
at that time. So it's a lot of times we wear our titles. That's who we are. Other times we're again, in my case, was just the average Joe that had done some amazing things. So it's
Mm-hmm.
it could be dependent on the situation. It could be dependent on the group you're around, the people, the environment. Who are you at that given time? And it's funny, even now, I'm on a new team at work, and that's one of the first questions people ask me. So, uh, what should I call you?
Right.
How do I refer to you? And so it's funny, even sometimes when you say, "Hey, this is how I'd like to be referred to as," some people still have their own
Mm-hmm.
interpretation or perception of
Right.
that. So it's just really, even if you think you're this person or that's the image you want to portray, that's not always the case.
Right.
It's not received that way on the other end. So sometimes you have to be, think about that as well. That this is who you want to be, or you think you are today, but that's not the way other people see you.
Right. Or the way that they want to see you
Right. Right.
because of
Yeah.
who they are today.
That's true.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And yeah, you made me start thinking a lot, about Professor Dave, teaching students and stuff like
Right.
that versus Dr. Dave versus, you know, Dave.
Right.
At
Right.
what
Yeah.
point I remember, when I was going through my doctoral program and in my higher education, we had a doctor. It was Dr. So and so for that professor. It wasn't a first
Right.
name thing, you know. And in my doctoral program, it was like one of my professors said, "Call me doctor."
Oh
And then
wow.
when we went out to the pub, the doctor said, "I'm not in the classroom. Call me by my first name." And it's like, because, and it wasn't like the first year or second year. It was like
Right.
near the end. It's like, okay, you've earned the ability to call me by my first name offline, but in the
Okay.
professional environment, you
Right.
will address me as doctor. Just like when you get in the professional environment, you will be addressed as doctor as well,
Right.
unless you give permission to someone to call you otherwise.
Right.
And I thought that was interesting because it was a transition period for me of who I was in that moment, who I was that day. And then within a matter of an hour, it was a different realization of who I was,
Right.
who that professor, what that professor expected of me, the doctoral student versus the doctoral peer, and it was a different me in that day, in that moment. And it was cool, but it's also confusing because it's like,
Right.
okay, so I can call you by your first name here, we're out having fun, but as soon as we go back in from break,
Right, right. Yep,
what,
yep,
and so there's a little bit of confusion there, but I get where that professor was going. They were trying to break down some of those
right.
barriers
Yep,
because within a few months, I was Dr. Dave. I became
yep.
Dr. Dave. And now, out of respect, I still call many of my professors doctor,
Right,
you
right,
know, and that's just purely a respect thing,
right, right,
and yeah, I mean, it gets back to who are you today? Who am I today?
right.
Am I, it's like geez, I feel like I'm just talking in circles right now, you
No,
know?
but you're right. That's kind of the same experience I had. Not along, like you said, during the doctoral program, all your professors were doctors typically, so that's how you address them. But it was funny after even after I became a doctor and I started teaching myself, and when I would refer to like our director, she was a doctor, and I referred to as doctor, and she immediately came back and said, "Hey, we're peers, so
Hmm.
you don't have to use that title anymore." But like you, kind of confusing. I know we're doctors because the expectation is that our students call us doctors, and so I want to give you that same respect. But I saw her point as well, that we're at the same level, but it could be confusing, even amongst your peers when you say, "Hey," and that's kind of the experience I'm having right now with some of my peers. When I first started working, at the job, I just referred to myself as Joe,
Hmm.
and then now I've met new teammates, and some of them call me Doctor Joe, some of them call me Doctor Hamlet, and others. And then when we're in this environment or in this setting where some of them call me Joe, some of them call me Doctor Hamlet, Doctor Joe. So it
Hmm.
is somewhat confusing, and so that goes back to me not wanting to really be the person that I should have been at the very
Hmm.
beginning, and
Yeah,
so that's
absolutely. It's are we bringing the right person to that
right.
moment?
Yeah.
Sometimes at other jobs, I wanted to be called doctor,
Right.
and it was frowned upon, and it was insulting to people. And other times it's like, no, you need to be addressed as doctor. You've earned it. I'm like, well, I don't feel comfortable being called that in this
Right.
situation. I don't want to be perceived as I'm better than everyone else because
Right.
I'm not, and this is not about our titles and us being pompous or anything like that. It's about us discussing who we are today because
Right.
offline we're Dave and Joe,
Right.
and in the podcast we introduce ourselves as doctor, but then we go back to being Dave and Joe, and that's just who we are today in this moment.
Right.
And I, I think it's just I think some of it is I think a lot of it is that self-awareness piece that we talk about. Do you need to be Dr. Joe today? Do you just need to be Joe? Do you just need to be dad or grandpa or
Right.
uncle or
Right.
brother
Yeah.
or friend or colleague or acquaintance or just a courteous, respectful human being at the grocery store? Are you
Right.
being the right moment? The right person in the right moment? Are you being the right you in that moment?
Right. No, and I think that's, I think I touched on it at the very beginning. That's really what it comes down to, that we all have these different personas, and depending on when they're needed is when they might show up. Like
Mm-hmm.
I jokingly said, you're Superman or Clark Kent going into the phone booth and becoming somebody else, and that sometimes is the way you feel, depending on who you're talking. You can go from one conversation to the next, and you're a different person. You're a different persona because of that. You may be talking directly to your peers, having fun, talking about the game, and then you go to a boss or somebody that's at a different level, and you may talk about politics, or you may talk about the state of the business, those types of things, and so you put on a different demeanor, but you're the same person. It's just now you're maybe uh, in a different setting that
Mm-hmm.
requires that you change your
Yeah.
tone, that you don't come in kicking doors down, but rather you're more subtle and again more deliberate about your conversations, those types of things.
Yeah, it reminds me, like it reminded you, going back to, previous employer, thinking, I'm coming in, I'm all happy, and I'm coming in joking and all this stuff, and they're looking at me like, what the hell's wrong with you?
Right.
We got a crisis, we've got a fire we got to put out, and I'm trying to lighten the mood, and I'm not getting the good eyes on me. They're looking at me like I'm the idiot in the room. Take this job seriously. And what do you do in that moment? How do you
Right.
self correct to the right you? Because you've already kicked the door in, like you said. You
Right.
can't like back up and then open it softly and say, hey, how's everyone doing today? You can't. There's certain times you can't redo things.
Right.
That being in that moment, and you've just blown it. I remember coming into work in a good mood, and I was happy and joking, and one of my one of my one of my team members had just had a bad day or bad week, and it wasn't. They were happy for me, and because I tried to keep a positive mood, but in
Right.
that moment, I should have dialed it way, way, way back, and I realized the error of my way real quick. The error of my way real quick, because it's like, oh, open the door, take a look, and then get the
Right.
right you to come through that door. You know.
But
So
but you know,
yeah, go ahead. Yeah,
I was just going to say, we're talking about how much we, as an individual, should be considerate of those types of things. But at the same time, even though we may go through all those motions of ensuring we're in the right setting and making sure we, come out the way we should, it's still not only up to us. It's still the
absolutely.
person on the receiving end that no
Mhm.
matter how we approach the situation or them, still may not be received positively anyway. So again, we have talked a lot about you being responsible for the tone, the mood, and those types of things, but not necessarily. But I think we should really be cognizant of how we feed into that. So I think that's what we
Absolutely.
can do is just to be aware. I think you said that before of what we're, what situation we're running into or coming into. So I think that's one of the things we can do to help the situation.
I totally agree. We can't be that person for everybody. They have to have some
Right.
accountability for
Right.
themselves.
Absolutely. Yep.
We've got a couple minutes left. What would you like to leave our viewers and listeners with, Joe? I mean, what takeaways, what tools can we leave them today?
I think the way we started this all off about we have all evolved to a certain degree throughout our lives, to our experiences, situations, and so the person we are today is probably not the person we were 10 years ago, 5 years ago. So I think just being, you know, understanding of that we have changed. We may not fit in a lot of places we used to. We just have to really be intentional about, like you say, coming in to an environment, to a setting, to a team meeting, all those things, and really just be considerate um, of course, who you are, but also how those things might affect other people, how you come across. So just keep that in mind. Like I say, I know it's not only on us to really be thinking about that. It is, the other person or group's responsibility as well to consider those things. But for the most part, we can do our part by being aware of who you are and who you're trying to portray.
I think that's great, Joe. I mean, a lot of sage advice there, and I think I hope the audience can walk away with something like this, like that, and be able to figure out how they can incorporate that into their personal, professional, and career development. So, with that, we'd like to thank all of our viewers and listeners for joining us for another episode of the Journeys of Not So Ordinary People podcast, your personal, professional, and career development podcast. Um, if there's any topics that you'd like for us to discuss or to consider, please feel free to reach out to us. We're always open for suggestions. And until next time, keep on being your not so ordinary you.